Hey everyone, it's Brennan. Welcome to my channel and welcome to my August reading wrap-up. Full transparency, this is my first ever video about books, so August was a really good reading month for me. I read 9 books total, 6 of those were fiction books and 3 were non-fiction books. I'm gonna wrap up the fiction books first, and then at the end of the video I'll go through the 3 non-fiction books I read this month, just because I feel like I don't have as much to say about the nonfiction. If you're interested in the topic, then you are, and if you aren't, then you aren't. First book I want to talk about, and it's actually the only physical book I read this month. This is Tower of Dawn. This is the 6th book in Sarah J. Maas's Throne of Glass series, so can't go into too much without spoilers. This book is unique though in the series because our main heroine Selena is not in this book at all. The plot of this book takes place at the same time as the plot of the 5th book in the series, Empire of Storms, and in that book we follow Selena and her crew, and in this book we actually follow Cale Westfall, who we learn a lot about in the first few books of the series. So this book is mainly focused on him, and without spoiling anything in the series, he kind of goes on a side quest to help Selena and everyone in their endeavor to save pretty much the world. I loved this book. I gave it 5 stars. I know that for some reason Cale is not very well loved in the Throne of Glass community, and I love him. He is a man who is focused on honor. He just wants to do right by his friends. He's pretty selfless, and I loved following him in this. Loved watching his character growth. He had a lot of good growth in this book. I will say this series is very heavy on the romance, which I'm here for. I love. And I went into this book completely ready for one relationship, and Sarah J. Maas just turned it around, and I was happy with how everyone ended up at the end of this book. So, love this. I hope that's as good of a synopsis as I can give without spoiling too much, but 5 stars. Love this. Love Cale, no matter what anyone says. The next 5 fiction books I read this month were all on Kindle. I read them on my phone just through the Kindle app, and they are all 5 romances. And that tends to be what I gravitate towards for Kindle. Let's start with the first romance I read on my Kindle this month, and that is Hopeless by Coleen Hoover. I really liked this book. I went into it without any expectations. It was free through Prime Reading, and I'd seen Coleen Hoover's name a lot, and I have one of her physical books that I haven't read yet. So I picked it up, and I ended up enjoying it. I gave it 4 stars. I was a little thrown off at first, and this will kind of be a common theme with some of these romances I read this month, but the characters in Hopeless are seniors in high school. We follow our main character, Sky, and she has been homeschooled her whole life. She's adopted, and her adopted mom, who she lives with, has been very anti-technology. No cell phone, no television, no TV. She kind of comes off as like, she's the cool hippie vegan mom who sells aromatherapy, and that might put some people off, but I really enjoyed it. Sky is 17. This will be her senior year, and she and her friend have talked her mother into letting her go to public school to finish up her senior year of high school. In Sky's new kind of beginning at high school, she meets this guy. His name's Holder. He acts really strange around her at the beginning. They meet at a grocery store, and he's like staring at her. Then he comes up to her acting kind of like he knows her from somewhere. So we kind of delve into the mystery of Sky's life. I don't want to give too many spoilers. I'm probably going to say that a lot for a lot of these books. But this book gets pretty dark for 17-year-olds in high school. So we learn more about Sky's past, and we also watch her relationship with Holder, of course, develops, and she just kind of has to deal with a lot of trauma that she has been through. So trigger warnings for sexual assault. I really enjoyed this book. I remember at the 60% mark, I was like, so that's where we're gonna go with this. So if you read it and you have feelings, please comment below because I would love to hear those. The next book I read, I wish, I'm going to order a physical copy of this book because I know that I'm going to want to just reread it and own it. This book is Punk 57 by Penelope Douglas. Again, a common theme. I went into this book and the characters are seniors in high school. And I've been out of high school for over 7 years now, so I thought, oh, I'm not gonna relate to these characters. I'm gonna feel like kind of creepy and gross, but just, I would call these books honestly new adult because of the themes, because of the plots, because of the content. But I love this book. I gave it 5 stars. It might be one of my favorite books I've read this year. This book follows our main characters, Misha and Ryan. Misha's the guy, Ryan is the girl. Misha and Ryan have been pen pals since they were in 5th grade. Now they're seniors in high school. They've never met each other in person. They've never looked each other up on social media. They kind of have an understanding that they really value their pen pal relationship. They're going to keep it that way and they don't want to mess anything up. Our book starts out, Misha runs into Ryan at this party, kind of. He's in a punk band. The title's Punk 57. And he's their like songwriter and singer. Misha runs into Ryan at a party and he knows who she is, but she does not know who he is. And he makes sure that she does not find out. And Ryan is different than Misha imagined her being. In their letters to each other, they're both very like introspective and just kind of think about the world and society and the nature of people. And Ryan in person she comes off as shallow. She's a cheerleader. The people she surrounds herself with are very shallow. So Misha's kind of questioning his pen pal relationship with her. So they meet and then Misha kind of has some big things go on in his life, which throws him into not impersonating, but he actually ends up going to Ryan's high school for like the last 6 weeks of their senior year, and he uses a fake name. And then this book just kind of follows Misha and Ryan as they honestly go from friends to enemies to lovers. Really interesting spin on the enemies to lovers trope. But they clash, they butt heads when they are at this high school together. He knows who she can be, and it's kind of like he's trying to pull that out of her. So we follow their relationship. This book has so many excellent steamy scenes. I really honestly also liked kind of the overall theme of, yeah, sometimes it's easier to surround yourself with all of these shallow people, but trying to like strive to be the best that you know you can be, even if it might be uncomfortable for other people. So I loved this book. Like I said, I gave it 5 stars. And at the end of this book, we kind of meet some other characters that are in Misha's life. And at the end of this book, it's like, read Penelope Douglas's series, Devil's Night. So I immediately downloaded the first book in that series, and it is called Corrupt. Okay, I had a great time reading this book, but at the end I gave it 3 stars. And let me kind of explain the plot and then I'll tell you where my 3 stars came from. In this book, we follow our main characters, Erica, she goes by Rika, and Michael. And Michael is the older brother of Rika's boyfriend. And I say boyfriend because she and this guy, Trevor, her boyfriend, come from kind of powerful, wealthy families. They're the same age, they go to the same school, so their families have just always kind of pushed them together and expected them to date and get married and be this wealthy power couple. But honestly, Rika has never really liked Trevor, and Rika likes his older brother, Michael. So this book, it has a lot of extremes. Michael is this like professional basketball player now. I think he's like 23 in the book. And Rika is, I think, a sophomore in college. She's just kind of trying to get out from under the thumb of her family and Michael and Trevor's family that have just kind of always put her into a box, and they've expected her to just do stereotypical rich girl things when those don't really interest her. And one of the things that I thought was really cool was that Rika's into fencing, and I've never read that in a book, so that was pretty interesting to see as her hobby. So the plot of this book is just what was so over the top for me. So when Michael and Rika were kind of in high school together, I think Michael had maybe just graduated, but he and 3 of his friends, which are the next 3 books in the series, they come back to the school. They were all on the basketball team, I believe. So they come back to the school for a devil's night. It's like October 30th, the day before Halloween, and they just kind of wreak rich boy mayhem on this town that they're in. They do some, like, honestly very illegal stuff, and they never get in trouble for it because they're rich and their families are powerful. And the book is told from, it's like flashbacks to these events when they happen, and then the present day. In the flashback event, they are doing their Devil's Night shenanigans, and Rika tags along with them. She's tired of being the stereotypical girl that her family wants her to be, and she tags along with the guys to get into some trouble, pretty much. We follow those events, and in the present day, Michael and his friends, we find out that his friends have just gotten out of jail. You learn that Michael and his friends are blaming Rika for his friends going to jail on this night that are in the flashbacks. They are so mad. They are basically plotting to destroy Rika's life. They do some really extreme stuff. More trigger warnings for just kind of violence, assault, but also she's just like totally all there for Michael. I never questioned her attraction to Michael because Penelope Douglas does such a good job at making me believe the characters' feelings, making me believe that they are meant to be together. I enjoyed it. The plot, though, just was so extreme, so unbelievable. Their anger and actions toward Rika were just so intense that the whole time I was just like shaking my head like, no, this is not gonna happen in real life. Not that fiction has to be like realistic or believable. And then at the end, there's a scene with Michael and Trevor. If you read the book, then it escalated. The whole book, I won't say that it escalated because the whole book just like rode up here the whole time in levels of plot intensity. So I enjoyed it. Again, lots of steamy scenes. Penelope Douglas has got the steamy scenes if you are interested in that in your romance. The next book I read this month was The Wallflower Wager by Tessa. This is the 3rd book in a series, and each book is a standalone. I would recommend all of them. I've loved them all so much. This book follows our main character, Penny. She is, I should mention that these are historical romances set in about like the 1800s England era. Penny is 25, she's unmarried, she's considered a spinster in this time period. She's content with her life. She lives on her own. She lives in like this mansion, and she has a team of servants that help run the household. But Penny's happy. She spends her time taking care of kind of wayward animals. She rescues animals. She has a little dog that has a little like wheelchair that it uses. She has a goat. She has a Highland steer. She has an otter. She has a hedgehog. Penny just is hanging out, taking care of her animals. That's what she enjoys doing. And she's happy living by herself. She has her friends who are in the other books. But things change when she has a new next door neighbor. Our hero in the story, Gabriel, has just moved in next door to renovate and sell off the house next door at a high profit. Gabriel kind of has a mysterious past. He is kind of new money. He came up from nothing pretty much. He has kind of made his living ruining other people in society, other noble people like the dukes, and he's kind of frowned upon by society because of his questionable money-making tactics. And I thought this book was really interesting in that Penelope was such a strong character. All of their interactions were initiated by Penny, and I just really enjoyed reading it. I read it so fast. Penny has been my favorite character of the series so far. I gave the first 2 books 4 stars, but this book was a 5-star read for me. It was so good. We learn about Penny's past and kind of why she's been kind of reclusive in society. One of my favorite parts of this book, the male character interactions. So now we have the couple from the first book, the couple from the second book, and now we have the third book. And the guys from each of the books, when they interact in this third book, I just smiled the whole time. I laughed. They are so funny. The banter, not just between like the romantic couple, but the banter between the friends and the guys, it is just grade A quality content. And the last fiction book I read this month was Heartbones by Coleen Hoover. This is her new release. I think it came out in August. I really liked this book. I gave this book 5 stars. We follow our main character, Bea, and she is a senior in high school. Actually, she just graduated high school. I don't feel like this is a spoiler because this happens in the first chapter. She has grown up in poverty. She actually lives in Kentucky at the beginning of the book, and I relate to that because I'm from Kentucky. I'm from a rural area in Kentucky. Bea, she's working at McDonald's and she comes home and her mom has overdosed and died in their trailer. And just watching Bea's reactions to things around her and hearing her thoughts about life and seeing her outlook on life was just so entertaining to read about, but also we see how Bea's childhood of trauma and hunger and poverty, living in a house with someone who has just abused drugs and alcohol and life and never given her child much attention, was just so fascinating to read about. So we follow Bea the day that her mom dies. She calls up her dad. She has a relationship with her dad, but she's never told him very much. She sees him like once a year sometimes. She calls up her dad and she doesn't mention anything. She just kind of says, hey, can I spend the summer with you? She needs somewhere to go. We follow Bea as she goes to Texas, the coast of Texas, to spend the summer with her dad. She kind of finds out that she has a family. She doesn't make much of an effort to know things about her dad, but her dad has married. He has a stepdaughter who is about Bea's age, so she kind of learns that she has a family. And watching her relationship with her stepsister was another thing that I just loved so much. They are such different people, but their relationship development was so good to me. So now let's get into her main relationship with our hero of the story. So Samson is her dad's neighbor in their like little coastal beach house community. No one knows very much about him. They've only known him for a few months, and he and Bea kind of start out as friends. There's an obvious attraction between them. So we watch their relationship develop. Bea opens up to him about some of the things that she's been through, and he seems to understand, which is odd for the next door neighbor who is apparently the son of this rich oil tycoon. They kind of find out that they are very similar. They've both been very lonely their lives, and they just kind of latch on to each other. They agree that it's just going to be a summer fling, but we know how those turn out. I guess this would be the plot twist in the story. They have some issues they have to deal with, and these issues are not going to be resolved overnight. The last part of the book kind of extends quite a bit. The issues that happen towards the end of the book inspire Bea in her career path that she chooses to go down. We kind of see how the choices that she has made play out for her. And I thought I was going to be disappointed in the end of this book, but it was so good. I loved this book. Stars from me, Coleen Hoover. I am working my way through her backlist now because I have eaten her books up this month. So let's quickly talk about the 3 nonfiction books I read this month. 2 of them I listened to the audiobooks, and one of them I also read on Kindle because... So the first nonfiction book I listened to this month was The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins. This was really interesting. It is a viewpoint that I have just never had much experience with my life, so just kind of seeing how religion can be one thing for some people, and then it can really be used as a power tool for other groups of people. Just learning more about how religion is handled in America, in other countries, and seeing how it can play out to kind of control people, kind of really affect how some people grow up in their lives. And just with nonfiction books, I mean, just reading them to be more aware of different things that go on, of different outlooks that some people may have. Learning a new perspective is just always something that I like to do. The book I listened to was Deadliest Enemy by Michael Osterholm, and this book is incredibly relevant. It talks about how kind of the world has responded to different pandemics, and is written by a high up guy in the public health world, and we hear about how things like Ebola was handled, different vector-borne illnesses like Zika, and some other mosquito-borne illnesses were handled. It's kind of disheartening to see how even after these pandemics that the world has already been through, not much gets done after them to prevent other pandemics from happening in the future. This book was written before the coronavirus pandemic, but in this book it mentions, you know, another pandemic is just, it's going to happen, it's just when. It could be the flu, it could be a coronavirus. It's good to learn about how the world reacts to things like this and how other groups are advocating for them to react. Really interesting, would recommend. It was a really good listen. And the last book I will talk about is The Devil in the White City by Erik Larson. I read this book on Kindle. It was so interesting. It's set in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and it centers around the World Fair in Chicago at that time. We follow kind of one group of men who are the architects, who are building the fair, who are making sure that everything's in order, and just all of the struggles that they go through to build this massive exposition in this time period, all the pressure that was on them, and all of the setbacks that they went through. And I would not say I am someone who is incredibly interested in architecture, but it was so interesting. Loved learning about that. The other half of our story follows Dr. H.H. Holmes, who is a serial killer. He is a serial killer who is in Chicago operating at this time that the fair is being built. And he was just, I don't want to like paint him in a positive light at all, but he was very interesting. I would just like, was shocked by some of the things he would do, not just the murder, but he was just so fascinated by insurance fraud and just seeing the things that some people could honestly get away with in this time period. Quite entertaining. I really enjoyed this book, especially the World Fair stuff was really awesome, and some of the parts actually made me emotional, like as they were building some of these exhibits. I don't want to call this like a spoiler, but they build the first of one of these things and it made me so emotional. Comment below if you know what I'm talking about. But the end of the book, Holmes has been apprehended, but then the investigators are like actually trying to figure out all of the things that he did. It was a joy to read, even though the content was quite dark and negative. Apparently, that is just a theme for me. Thank you all for watching my first YouTube video. Those were the books I read this month. Comment down below if you've read any of these. Comment down below if you have suggestions on what I should read next. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and thank you so much for watching.